offense, you do face up to 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. There is no mandatory minimum sentence for such a conviction. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
You have a number of constitutional rights that were played before court started. Were you able to hear and understand those rights?
Yes, sir.
You have had a chance to talk to Mr. Huey about this case, and after doing so, you've handed forward this statement of defendant on plea of guilty. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
This statement has some initials on here and a signature. Did you place these initials and signature on this form?
Yes, sir.
And did you place these initials here to indicate that you have reviewed this statement of defendant on plea of guilty? You understand the rights you are giving up, as well as the potential consequences and immigration consequences for a change of plea today?
Yes, sir.
There is a recommendation here for credit for time served and a $500 fine. You understand I'm not required to follow that recommendation. If you plead guilty today, you do face up to the maximum penalty of 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. Has anybody made any promises or threats to get you to plead guilty today other than this recommendation?
No, sir.
And did you read this statement of defendant on plea of guilty, or did Mr. Huey read it to you?
Sorry, I didn't hear you, sir. No.
Did this form here, did you read this, or did Mr. Huey read this to you?
You read it for me.
All right, thank you. To the charge of theft, a crime which was committed on or about November 19th, 2020 in the city of Pasco. How do you plead, sir? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty?
Your statement is by way of an Alford plea. What that means is that you have reviewed these facts with Mr. Huey, and you do believe that if a jury were to hear these facts and believe these facts, they could find beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed this crime. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
I'll accept your plea of guilty. You find there's a factual basis for the plea. I will incorporate the affidavit of probable cause. Mr. Sampson, you do have a right to address the court before any sentence is imposed. Is there anything that you would like to say?
No. No, sir.
Are you working, Mr. Sampson?
No, sir.
How do you support yourself?
I'm Social Security. Self-employed.
And that's your only source of income other than this, what was indicated here, use scrap metal?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to find that you meet the statutory definition of indigence. I'm not going to impose any fines or costs. I will accept the recommendation on the theft, 1 day in jail with no days suspended, credit for 1 day already served. You're not to go back to these apartment locations. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. I will dismiss count 2 pursuant to the agreement. We have some paperwork for you. That'll conclude your case today. You're welcome. Norma McRoberts, you stand there where you are, Ms. McRoberts. Good morning. You are here today as well on the charges of theft and unlawful trespass. You understand the maximum penalty that could be imposed if you were convicted of these offenses. You understand that you have a number of constitutional rights that were played before court started today. You are a co-defendant to the case that we just handled with Mr. Sampson. Is that correct? You have had a chance to talk to Mr. Huey about this case. And after doing so, you've handed forward this statement of defendant on plea of guilty. Did you go over this with Mr. Huey? Yes. There are some initials here as well as a signature. Did you place these initials and signature on this document? Yes, I did. And did you place these initials here to indicate that you've reviewed this statement with Mr. Huey? You understand the potential consequences and the potential immigration consequences, as well as the rights you waived by pleading guilty today? Yes. There is a recommendation here to dismiss count 2 and for a fine and credit for time served. You understand I'm not required to follow that. If you plead guilty today, you do face up to the maximum penalty. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. Other than this recommendation, has anybody made any promises or threats to get you to plead guilty? No. You're doing this voluntarily? To count 1, the charge of theft, a crime which was committed on or about November 19th, 2020 in the city of Pasco. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty? Guilty. And did you read this statement of defendant on plea of guilty, or did Mr. Huey read this to you? He read it to me. Thank you. And again, your plea is by way of an Alford plea. What that means is that you have reviewed these facts with Mr. Huey. You understand them. You agree that if a jury were to believe these facts, they could find beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed this crime. Is that a correct statement? Yes, it is. I'll accept your plea of guilty, incorporate the affidavit of probable cause. I find sufficient facts to support the plea of guilty here. Is there anything you would like to say regarding sentencing? I do have some similar questions as those I asked Mr. Sampson. Are you working, Ms. McRoberts? And how do you support yourself? And is that your only source of income? I will find that you meet the statutory definition of indigence. I'll impose 1 day, follow the recommendation. No days suspended, credit for 1 day already served. Again, you're not to go back to that property at 6405 Chapel Hill. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. All right, I have some paperwork for you. We'll give that to you. You can have a seat. Thank you. Colin Canaday.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Canaday, you are here today on a charge of driving while under the influence of intoxicants. That is a gross misdemeanor. If you are convicted of that, you face up to 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now, I did notice in the affidavit of probable cause that you indicated to the officers that you have some difficulty hearing. Are you able to hear me today?
Yes, but I do have hearing loss.
All right. I am a little concerned given the level of alcohol in your system. And I want, at the time of this arrest, I want to make sure that you understand what we're doing here today.
Okay.
You know why you're here?
Yes, I do.
And do you understand the charges against you?
Yes, sir.
And you understand that you have a right to go to trial on this case if you wish to do so, that you are not required to enter a change of plea today. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to understand Mr. Huey sufficiently when you went over this case with him?
Yes, sir.
And do you believe that at this point in time, you are affected by the alcohol that you consumed earlier that might make you unable to knowingly and voluntarily enter into any type of agreement with the court today?
No,
All right, you are fully understanding the process here today.
yes.
You have any questions about those rights that you have as a result of this criminal charge?
No, sir.
Has Mr. Huey been able to answer any questions that you've had regarding this case today?
Yes, sir.
And after speaking with him, you have handed forward this statement of defendant on plea of guilty.
Yes.
Did you go over this with him?
Yes.
And did you read this or did he read this to you?
He explained it.
There are some initials on this form as well as a signature. Did you place these initials and signature?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you place these initials here to indicate that you understand the rights you have, you understand the potential consequences, and also the potential immigration consequences for a change of plea today?
Yes, sir.
And did you sign this document in order to indicate that you have reviewed this with Mr. Huey, you understand what you're doing, and you're doing this voluntarily today?
Yes, sir.
There is a recommendation that is contained in this form. You understand I am not required to follow the recommendation. If you plead guilty, you do face up to the maximum sentence. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Has anybody made any promises or threats to get you to change your plea today?
No, sir.
Are you doing this voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
To the charge, and I should tell you that there is a mandatory minimum sentence of 2 days in jail for this offense. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
To the charge of driving under the influence of intoxicants, a crime which was committed on or about November 20th, 2020 in the city of Pasco. How do you plead, sir? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Your statement is that on or about, I'm going to change this because I think this was done this morning after midnight. It says the 19th, but on or about November 20th, 2020 in Pasco, Washington, I drove a car while under the influence of alcohol with a BAC higher than 0.15.
Yes, sir.
That's a correct statement?
Correct.
I'll accept your plea of guilty and find there's a factual basis for the plea. How long have you lived in this area, Mr. Kennedy?
Most of my life.
All right. And I did notice in the affidavit of probable cause indicated an indication that you recently lost your job. What kind of work do you do, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm a packaging line mechanic for a food processing plant.
All right. And when you are employed, how much do you earn each hour?
Well, when I was employed, I was making $29 an hour.
All right. And is this the type of job that you anticipate you may be able to return to?
Not that one because of the COVID, but yeah, I could probably find work somewhere else.
All right. So when this pandemic finally ebbs, you believe you'll be able to go back to work?
Yes, sir.
I will take in consideration your current circumstances in this imposing the sentence.
Your Honor, can I mention something?
Yes, you can.
I've already spent 1 day in jail. Does that, do I get credit for that?
You will get credit for any time that you have served in relation to this. It looks like you, well, depends on which one you read. The citation says 12 minutes after midnight, and the report says 7 minutes before midnight. So you've been here since last night. Yeah. I will accept the recommendation in this case, 364 days in jail with 361 days suspended. You don't actually have 24 hours in yet, so you don't necessarily have any credit, but the jail does begin to calculate that from when you were booked in. Okay. So you have 3 days to serve on this case. I'm going to find that you may not immediately have an ability to make payments, but you do have a future ability to make payments based on your history of employment. I will take that into consideration in setting the amounts of the fines and the cost, however. So I will impose a fine in the amount of $350. There is a $150 jail assessment. There is a probation fee of $200. There is an alcohol violator assessment of $250 and a DUI emergency response fund assessment of $300. There is a criminal conviction fee of $43 and a $102.50 traffic penalty assessment. That, if my math is correct, is a total of $1,395.50. I'm going to set your payments at $35 a month and begin those on February 20th, 2021. If you are able to make any payments before then, you can certainly do that. You can pay it off in full at any time. You just need to make sure that you follow this and you pay at least that $35 a month when payments begin on February 20th. You are on probation for a period of 5 years. During that time, you're not to have any criminal violations. You're not to drive without a license or insurance. Your license will be suspended by the Department of Licensing pursuant to this conviction.
It will be.
Yes, it will be. You are not to have any alcohol-related infractions or offenses. You are not to consume any alcohol, marijuana, or non-prescribed drugs while on probation. You are to have an evaluation for an alcohol addiction and follow the recommendation. You need to complete that within 120 days. You must attend the DUI Victims Impact Panel within 120 days. You will be on supervision. There are some mandatory conditions of probation. You shall not drive a motor vehicle without a valid driver's license. You shall not drive a motor vehicle without proof of insurance or other financial responsibility. You shall not drive or be in physical control of a motor vehicle with an alcohol concentration of 0.08 or more, or a THC concentration of 5 nanograms per milliliter of whole blood or higher within 2 hours of driving. You shall submit to a breath test or a blood alcohol test upon the reasonable request of a law enforcement officer. You shall not drive a motor vehicle without a functioning ignition interlock device as required by the Department of Licensing. A violation of any one of those mandatory conditions will result in an additional 30 days in jail and a 30-day loss of your license. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
You will be required to report to probation on November 24th. Currently, individuals are required to report by phone. So we're going to provide you with probation's phone number. You must make this phone call. It's just like if you were reporting in person. A failure to report could result in a warrant being issued. You understand that? All right. Do you have any questions today, Mr. Kennedy? All right. Mr. Kennedy, I have an address for you on West Irving Street.
Yes, sir.
That's a current address?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And Your Honor, I have one more question.
Yes.
How long is my license going to be suspended for?
1 year for a blow over 0.15.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Now, you need to stay on top of that. There are ways for you to get a provisional license, but you'll need to investigate that, okay?
Okay. Yeah, because without it, there's no chance of me getting a job.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. That concludes our cases set this morning. We will be in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you, Mr.
Huey.
Hanson. Thank you, Mr. Huey. All right, you as well.